Why do we work? We work out of panic, out of paranoia, out
Yeah.
of like this idea that we don't want to be poor.
What needs to fundamentally change in an age of artificial intelligence?
I wish I did the things that I wanted to do, not the things that I was forced to do.
If money was no option, what would you do, right?
Right. We tell kids not to lie, right? And like, don't lie. Lying is bad. Lying is nature.
What the hell is purpose to the average parent? What is purpose?
How do we prepare our kids for jobs that don't exist, but might never exist?
A 4-year degree even still relevant at this point? Welcome back to Mork Unfiltered, folks. Today's guest is Jaime Casap, a first-generation American who grew up in the tough streets of Hell's Kitchen and went on to become Google's chief educational evangelist. For over 14 years, Jaime helped bring digital transformation to classrooms around the world, scaling initiatives like Chromebooks and Google for Education to schools all over the earth. He's now leading a radical experiment in Arizona to redesign education from the ground up, placing purpose and human skills at the center of how we prepare students for the future. This is a conversation about identity, reinvention, and the future of education. This is Mork Unfiltered, and this is Jaime Casap. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. How's it going?
It's great, man. It has been a crazy fourth quarter, a crazy month, way too much traveling. And I think like a lot of people.
I heard a rumor that like Christmas is in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that to me, and I still have not bought my presents. So
Actually, it's like 5 days from now. It's insane.
I know. Thank God for Amazon, man. I hope same day shipping or next day shipping works in Belgium because I'm heading there in like 2 days. So yeah, it's crazy how fast this year has gone, man. It's like I blinked my eyes and I woke up and it's like end of 2025.
There's science behind that. You know that, right? The more we talk about how faster life goes, there's a reason why. So there's two things happening. Well, lots of things happening, but the big two things are, one, news cycles are 24 hours a day now, right? It's not 6 o'clock news. So you're just consistently getting bombarded with new information.
Totally.
So it makes things go faster, right? So that's one. And two, the science part, even if none of that was true, you and I'm old. I'm not going to say you're old. I'm old. And it's math. Like the longer you're alive, the less time a day is, right? Because when you're 2 years old, a year is half your life, right? When you're 97, like I am, then a year is like 3 days, right? So there's science behind this.
Yeah, but I've never, Jaime, met a 97-year-old with your hair, man. I mean, I don't know how you do it, brother, but it's amazing.
It's reverse psychology. I keep trying to go bald, and this is what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's kind of like start off and dive into the main kind of segment of the show, because obviously education, huge topic. We could talk about this for days, weeks, months, years, as I know you have. But I kind of want to go back to your early upbringing, because so much of that shapes why we end up doing the stuff that we do later in life. And it certainly shapes our views on things. So, you grew up in Hell's Kitchen, right? We talked about that the last time we talked. And I was curious, what was your experience with education in your younger years? And more importantly, like, how did that impact and shape how you look at education and the opportunities in improving education today?
Yeah. So thanks, Patrick. To me, education is everything, right? This is why I focused most of my career on this topic. I grew up in Hell's Kitchen, New York, and the old school Hell's Kitchen, not the one you find today, but the one from the 70s and 80s that you were afraid to go into.
The tough one.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't even realize I was wearing my Brooklyn t-shirt. This was my birthday. My birthday was a couple of days ago. My kids.
Happy birthday, man.
Thank you. My kids sent me this as a present because I have two of my 3 kids live in Brooklyn. And so I went a couple months ago, spent time there, and Brooklyn is now where the new place is. But Hell's Kitchen was a tough place to grow up in. And I went to PS111, ended up playing basketball. I think basketball was a big factor in my life. I ended up being captain of my high school basketball team, and sports was a foundational aspect to my life because you had to do well in school, well enough to play. You had to be in class to play. So it kept me grounded in that space. To me, education, everything from, I went to school, I showed up PS111. They said, welcome to PS111. And I said, ¿qué? English is my second language. So I was in
Yeah.
bilingual education for a couple years, and then in public school for a while. And then I ended up playing for Power Memorial and St. Agnes in basketball for through high school. And to me, when I think about education and I think about graduating high school, I realized I don't know how, but I realized that just graduating from high school wasn't enough, that wasn't going to get me out of the ghetto. And so
Right.
I went to college. I did well in college. And then I went to graduate school and I did well in graduate school. And I am here today because of education. And I
Right.
talk to teachers and educators about this all the time. I don't honestly remember, no offense to the guy, but I don't honestly remember the name of my last manager at Google. It was like 6 years ago. I don't remember his name, but I remember my third grade teacher's name. I remember my
Wow.
sixth grade teacher's name. Remember my eighth grade teacher's name. I remember quotes from principals and hard teachers and great teachers and funny teachers. That was so fundamental to me. And I realized that education is that silver bullet, and the education is what gets you out of those situations. And so the reason I dove so deep into the technology aspect of education is because I believe that technology opens up the door to information and education across the board, and we're just not
Right.
taking advantage of it.
Right. And when you look back at your education, particularly those early years, right, and in Hell's Kitchen, how would you characterize the level of education that you got and the completeness of it, and how it prepared you? Was it was it good? Was it great? Was it mediocre? Was it?
I think I look back on that and I think it was great for the time. I joke about how I had to stop helping my kids with their homework like in 5th grade because, the content and rigor of education got so much better over the last 60 years, when I was in school. But for the time, I broke my ankle playing football in 4th grade, and my classroom was on the 4th floor of a building that didn't have an elevator, and I had a big giant cast on my foot. There were no such things as tutors. And so I missed like 3 months of school. And you know what the school did?
Wow.
They left me back. I had to repeat 4th grade, right? Like
Mhm.
when was the last time you hear those stories where kids get left back? I can't remember the last time I heard that. So your kid didn't do enough to pass to the next grade. And so my mom said, okay. And so I repeated 4th grade again because I missed so much of school in 4th grade. So that kind of discipline, that kind of like, you need to pass this class. For the time, education
Yeah.
was great. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. And honestly, it continues to do what it was designed to do. It was designed to create a mass population of about 80% of people to have basic education to get through the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
It's still doing that. It's just that the world has fundamentally changed, and we need to change with it.
So when you think about that and you think of where we are today, I mean, what do you think needs to fundamentally change in education, particularly kind of like middle school, high school? What needs to fundamentally change in an age of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, no, that is the question I've been thinking about for the last year, and it's a radical question that we need to spend a lot of time and attention on, because we've talked about it so many times. It's a little bit like the boy cried wolf, right? All these big changes are coming. We need to change education. All these big changes coming. We've been saying that for a number of decades. This is fundamentally different. AI is fundamentally different. I'm looking at data that shows me entry-level jobs are going away. I'm looking at data that shows me that companies aren't hiring at the skill level that they used to hire. They used to bring people in at the beginning, and that's when you would do your 1 or 2 years of. That's gone. It's going to be gone. It's gone now. It's definitely going to be gone in the next 5 years. And so what we need to think about is, how do we prepare our kids for jobs that don't exist but might never exist, right? So what does that look like? So I want us to focus on what I call human skills. And we've had different terminology for this. We've called them 21st century skills. We've called them the 4 C's. It's the same stuff, right? It's those human things that make us human. So I break them down into the ability to understand things, right? The understanding how things work, the ability to think, which is something that a lot of
Critical
people
reasoning.
don't even have. Yeah, critical reason is a subset of the ability to think, right? There's divergent thinking, there's systems thinking, there's lots of different subsets of what thinking looks like. The third one is the ability to get shit done, right? The ability to get things done. Like you get a task and you get it done. Then the ability to be a storyteller, which we're doing right now. It's this idea that how do you take information, the mass amount of information, the complexity of information, and present it in a way that makes sense to people. The fifth is the ability to be part of a community, which is this idea that whether you and I are on a team together or whether we work in an organization or a city, a state, a country, how do you function inside that community? And then across the bottom is the ability to use tools, and whether those tools are a hammer and a screwdriver or AI and fusion computing in the future, those tools, the ability to know and understand how to use those tools is fundamental. And across the top, and I think a lot of what you do here is that top part, which is the ability to master yourself, right? The ability to have agency and master yourself, and in all the ways that that comes about, because those things as a package are the human skills that we need, no matter what you end up doing in your life.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And, it's like, are there skills in particular that you look at and you worry about the impact of artificial intelligence on the development of those skills?
Yeah, I see a lot in the education space about kids are cheating,
Yeah.
and I laugh at that. Or
Yeah.
I wish I was smart enough to invest in the companies that make blue books, because apparently in blue book sales are skyrocketing again.
I heard that. I heard they're on the comeback.
Yeah, they're on a comeback. And so what is that, right? And so it is, here's the question we want to ask students. It doesn't matter that the answer is out there. We still want them to come up with the answer. It's very similar to what happened 20 years ago when, no, we got to ban the internet. Kids have to
Yeah.
memorize
Yeah. Exactly.
dates and times. That went away. So I assume this will go away as well. The deeper question we should be asking ourselves is, if a kid can take AI to answer a question or to write an essay or summary of something, then maybe we should be asking different questions. Maybe the work should look different. So AI is an opportunity for us to reevaluate what education should look like and ask ourselves, how do we take advantage of these tools, as opposed to how do we ban them and keep them out of our kids' hands? Because it's an
Hmm.
insanity when you think about it. I have this vision in my head where I think about, you get that question like, who would you have dinner with if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive? And I always say Einstein, right? Einstein's the guy I want to have dinner with, because
Right.
he's an alien brilliant guy. And I want to just sit there and go, see this thing here? See this? Look, I'm gonna show you all the things that I can do.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
keep it away from people.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it's like, but it's like if you're a parent right now, right, and you've got a kid that is graduating high school and considering what's next, right? What do you tell that kid? I mean, in an age where, like you said, artificial intelligence is changing everything, entry level jobs are going away. We think of like the career path that you and I followed, which is now old school, right? That career path is kind of like going away. This idea of having a career for 10 or 15 years potentially no longer exists. Maybe the career cycles are going to be much shorter. What do you tell a kid that is like telling his parents, well, I don't think I'm going to go to college because I don't want to spend 4 years studying a whole bunch of stuff that might not be useful to me. I don't know what the labor market's going to look like. And, there's a whole bunch of free stuff online, whether it's on YouTube or paid courses on Udemy or whatever, Udacity. And I can join a mentorship group on Instagram, which helps me study kind of the thing that I'm interested in. What do you tell that kid, or what do you tell their parents?
You said earlier that we could talk about education for hours. This is one of those topics we could do a 3-part segment on just this topic, because there's so
Yeah.
many
Tune in
players
next
in here.
week to part two of my conversation with Hyman.
There's so many players in this space. Number one, let's talk about higher education, right? That group. And I have a keynote that I do with higher education teams, leadership teams, which is the hidden value proposition of higher learning. And the point there is that you're selling the wrong thing. I'm gonna feel like I'm yelling at them now. You're selling a piece of paper. Like, come here, get this piece of paper in accounting and you'll get a job. And
Yeah.
that's not what the pitch should be. The pitch should be, come, like on the website, right at the front page, it should say, what problem do you want to solve? Come here,
Right.
ASU, and we'll solve it together. Right?
Right.
It's a partnership. It's not come here and learn, come here and partner with us. That's number one. Number two is the value proposition of human skills. We just talked about what those human skills are. Come here, we're going to teach you those human skills, and you're going to get to practice them for 4 years and master those skills. The third aspect is this idea of like, we talked a little bit, there's information that's coming at us from everywhere. There's so much information. Come
Yeah.
here. We're going to help you make sense of that information and create original intelligence from it. And then the last one, and there's more, but the last one I'll bring up is this idea of lifelong learning. This idea
Right.
that you're going to go to school. You and I went to school for 4 years and we were supposed to learn everything that we needed to learn for the next 40 years. That's not true anymore.
Yeah. What
So come here. Let's solve a problem you're passionate about, a problem that you care about, and let's be in this partnership for the next 40 years together. So in other words, everything that I want to learn for the rest of my life should be going through, and I use them as an example because my kids went there and I went there, asu.edu, right? And so that's the value proposition that's missing in higher education. Now, on the other side, you take, and I have a 13-year-old stepdaughter, and this is a true story. 2 years ago, I asked her, what do you want to do? Like, what's the problem that you want to solve? Which is the question I ask kids all the time. And she's like, I want to be a hairdresser. And I gave her the same kind of boxed answer or response that I gave my first kid when she was 5 and told me she wanted to be a lounge singer. I said, oh, that's cool. That's great.
you asked her that at 5?
she that's what she kept saying she wanted to do. But I said, oh, that's great. That's cool. You want to be but in my head, I'm like, oh no, you're going to college and you're going to graduate. You're going to get, and then 2 years later, same thing. What do you want to focus on? I want to be a hairdresser. I'm like, yes, do that. Because that's AI proof, right? Like literally that happened inside 2 years. Now, where does higher education come in? Well, I don't want her to just be a hairdresser. I want her to own a multi-billion-dollar franchise of hair salons across the world. So for that, you're going to need to go to a university, get your entrepreneurial skills, build those human skills that you need, potentially get a degree in either finance or management, whatever it is. So it's this tie-in, to your point, between your purpose, your passion, and the skills you need to develop, and where can you go do that? Because I would argue that those 4 years that you get to go do that somewhere is so valuable that I think we should be doing that every 20 years. And you and I should go spend 2 years on a university campus learning new stuff. It should be part of what we do all the time.
Yeah. You raise a couple of interesting points that I want to dig into. I was at the AI Disruption Summit yesterday here in Miami that was hosted by Fred Vocolo, who's a very famous entrepreneur and the founder of Kaseya, which is, the Kaseya Center, and it's a big company that's been very successful here in Florida. And he had a whole panel on education, and he had like presidents of some of the president of FIU was there, the president of Northeastern was there, the president of, like a bunch of people were there who know something about education. And one of the things that kind of, was interesting about hearing them talk about it was, the question of, is a 4-year degree even still relevant at this point? And so what do you think about that?
The idea that it takes you 120 credit hours to get a computer science degree and 120 credit hours to get a sociology degree is insane. Though they're not the same. So right off the bat, we're saying, oh, you need to have this many seat hours. We have to redesign all of that. The idea here to me is, and I don't like saying the word higher education, I say higher learning. The idea is high school is great to get me to this point. And honestly, I mean, I have some ideas around why do we let kids go out of high school, right? Especially, we take marginalized kids that are growing up in poverty. We bring them through high school. Let's say they have a good high school career. Let's say they're doing well. The teachers are working with them. They go to a great school. And then we say, all right, good luck. Go back out there and start all over again. And it's insane. And then all of a sudden you see these numbers like, oh, I wonder why so many Black and Latino kids living in poverty never make it through college. Why do we let them go? Why don't we just keep going with them? Why don't we just keep teaching them? Why do we have to stop at this grade level? That's insane to me. So we have to redesign what that all looks like. But even in its current model, I would say the degree doesn't matter as much as the experience that you're gaining in that higher learning environment. And I think the universities and colleges need to focus on that part of it, which is what is the experience that we're giving these students, not just for those 4 years, but potentially for the rest of their lives. Why do I have a subscription model to Netflix, but not one to a university?
Yeah, good point. It's a fair question. I like that way of thinking because, the other thing that they talked about goes back a little bit to what you said about solving a particular problem. right? So they were talking about accreditation. They were talking about, okay, maybe kid comes in and has a very specific idea of something that they want to learn, and they can just learn that in a much shorter time frame. But I want to touch on the question of purpose, because you and I talked about this, and apparently that is kind of like part of your focus now in this project with Tempe, right? And so when you talk about purpose, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean when you say we have to help kids find their purpose? In terms of a career, what the hell is purpose to the average parent? What is purpose?
Right. So one is, I'm glad I wasn't at that conference, because I would have stood up and lost my mind when someone said a kid comes in and knows X, because my experience is that kids don't know. And why do we assume that they do? We've given them no, and this is back to why I'm doing what we're doing at Tempe Elementary, is kids don't know who they are. And I have examples of that with my kids. My first daughter, she's 33 years old, and when she was going to college and she was picking her major, she's like, okay, I'm gonna be a business major, which is like every parent's dream to hear their kid say. And I said, why? Tell me more. She said, I looked at jobs and I looked at what's practical, and most jobs are, and you'll appreciate this, in marketing, in the marketing space. I think that's where I fit the best. So I want to get a degree in business and focus on marketing. And I said, as a parent, by the way, a first generation parent, I said, nope, not paying for that. And she looked at me and she's like, what?
Okay.
And I said, if you get a degree in film, I will pay for that. If you get an art degree, I will pay for that. And she's like, okay. And so she went and got a degree from Herberger here at ASU in film. Why? Because this kid had been making movies on anything that she could find since she was 5 years old. This was what she was born to do. It was easy to tell. What is she doing today? She owns a film company, lives in New York, and does really, really well. She's actually in Costa Rica for the next month on a self-imposed sabbatical to spend time with her partner for a month, and she's doing well. She was a film major. Now, my second kid comes to me when he's in college, and he goes, okay, I'm going to be a political science major. And I go, you don't even know who the governor is. No, you're not going to be a political science major. Why? Because this kid has had access to every politician in this state since he was born. He lived with me since he was 8 years old. And we had governors in his house, and mayors and senators, and he's been to dinners. Not once did he ever say, hey, can I go work on their campaign? Can I? As a matter of fact, when he said this, my friend, my really, really good friend, Senator Ruben Gallego was running for senator, and he could have been like, hey, can I go work for Ruben's campaign? Like, nothing ever had come up. He didn't know himself. My little kid, my 11-year-old, she's gonna come to me when she's 16. She's like, all right, I'm gonna get on a bus and go to New York to get on Broadway, and be like, okay, cool, because that's what she was born to do. So the idea that these kids know who they are is insane. Because if my kids don't know who they are, I don't know whose kids do. So how many examples do we have of kids saying, I want to be a teacher, and then the first day they're in class, they're like, nope, this isn't for me. I want to be a nurse, and they go and work in a hospital, and like, nope, not for me. I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, all these things that they think they want to know how to do or want to be, and then they go and do it, and they're miserable. Why are 80% of people disengaged in the work that they do? Because they didn't understand who they were or what their purpose is. So what we're trying to build here at Tempe is a school, 6th to 8th grade, because we talked a little bit about this. Junior year, senior year in high school is way too late to think about what you want to be when you grow up, or think about what job you want. But 6th grade is way too early to say to a 6th grader or 12-year-old, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What job do you want? And so what do we do in that span is what we're creating here is this idea that we want to build a school where kids are going to understand their passions, and their purpose, while they explore pathways and possibilities. Because the evidence shows us, science-based evidence shows us that kids in middle school become the most disengaged with schoolwork because they can't see the connection between what the work that they do and their future. It's also, the science also tells us that the more you can explore possibilities, the more you can explore careers and pathways and all this, the better you'll be lined up to something that you're good at. So come at our school, we're going to help them identify who they are, what they care about, what their passions are. And so, like I said earlier, I ask kids this question all the time, which is, what problem do you want to solve? And then the second question is even more important. How do you want to solve it? How do you want to take your purpose, your passions, your gifts, your talents to solve that problem? And if they don't know what those are, how are they ever going to come up with a functional way to solve that problem? And then the third question is, okay, what do you need to learn? What do you need to master? What are the skills that you need to have to take on that problem? Because
Right.
there's a
Right.
billion ways to solve every single problem we can identify.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you say that because it's kind of like when I hear you talk about purpose, and I wrote about this in my book, and my book was all around career transitions for folks like our age, much later in life, which is something also I want to ask you about in this podcast because I think there's tackling the early formative years, which what you're talking about right now, which is critical, right, for those young students. But then there's a whole generation of like people in their 50s and 40s who are like waking up to this AI era and they're kind of fucked because they're like, my job's going away, AI is changing everything, and I don't even know how I stay relevant, right? Separate question. But they are connected by a common thread, which is this idea of purpose. And so when I wrote the book, I spent a ton of time thinking about this, and I kind of came to the conclusion that the framework that worked for me at the time, which I think you and I talked about on our last call, was this Japanese idea of the ikigai, right?
Mhm.
This framework for living a life of meaning and purpose being what is purpose? It's the intersection of four things, which is, what you're passionate about, which is what you've been talking about, what the world needs to some extent, which is like, what is this big problem that I'd like to work on? And God knows there are plenty of big problems.
Mhm.
What can I get paid for doing? Because at some point you got to pay the rent, right? Unless you're rich. And then there's the fourth component, which is, of course, what skills do I have? What am I really good at doing, which is going to enable me to actually pursue this career, right? And that's kind of when you're early in your educational career. Well, if you start from the premise which you were talking about, which is what's the big problem I want to solve? I want to solve this. Okay, well then when you're early in your career or when you're young in school, you have to learn those skills. Whereas when you're older, maybe you already have some of those skills. So when you think of purpose from that perspective, well, first of all, what are your thoughts on the Ikigai as a framework for finding out what you should be doing with your life from a purpose point of view? And I
Right.
guess the follow-on question would be, does that apply or how can it be applied to people that are in school, like
Right.
the kids that you're
Yeah.
working with?
Well, and I think that's the fundamental question. This is here's what my not issue, but where I want to challenge the model, which is asking a fundamental question: why do we work?
Right.
Right? And I
Yeah.
think when we start answering that question, what we realize is that it all started with like, hey, I'm growing strawberries and you're growing potatoes. I'll trade you some
Hmm.
potatoes from strawberries, right? So that way
Yeah,
we
it's
both
trading.
have. Right.
Yeah.
It's trading. It's trading.
Yeah.
It's like I'm going to trade my skills and you're going to pay me. And my skills are going to help develop X. So what are we saying with AI, robotic? I mean, think about the things that are coming. AI, and AI is not really. I don't like that word because it's really it's just large learning models. It's not
Right.
AI, true AI, but it's
Right.
large learning models, machine learning, robotics, which we'll get right at some point, quantum computing, and eventually fusion, which will be able to power everything for free in an endless way with clean energy, right? So that's kind of the world that's coming. And so if all those things are coming that are gonna, and this is what we're afraid of, oh no, these things are coming and they're gonna be able to do what I do better than I do, right? And so the right now it's like, oh no, AI is coming for our job. When are we going to flip that to, hey, AI is coming for our jobs, right?
Hmm.
Why aren't we excited about this? The reason
Yeah.
we're not excited is because we don't have a good plan in place, and
Exactly. We don't have a plan B.
we don't have a plan. We don't have a, hey, guess what, world? Both government and business come together and say, look, we realize that all these technologies are going to do a lot of the things that you do, and we're
Yeah.
going to be able to profit. Or so what we're going to do is take that pile of money and give it back to you so that you can buy things, and we'll live in this beautiful cycle where we'll make things and give you money and you buy things and everybody's happy. That world is coming at some point, and all the evidence shows us universal basic income works, because what we're afraid of is, oh no, if you give people money, they'll stop doing things. And I don't think that that's true. I think that model has been tested. And the reality is, if you gave me, I'm making up numbers, so none of these numbers are real. If you gave me a baseline of $100,000 a year, and I know that's a lot of money, let's say $50,000 a year, and that covered living and food, let's say, covered enough to keep a roof over my head, let power on, and be able to buy food for my kids. And then say, anything you make over that is yours. Think about that world. Think about the world where, like, oh, really? Like, I can make $1,000 doing something I'm passionate about because I know I have a safety net of home, health, and food, right? Because that's
right.
Why do we work? We work out of panic, out of paranoia, out of like this idea that we don't want to be poor. It's the question I used to answer all the time whenever I did a job interview. Like, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? I gave you your corporate answer, but in my head, I'm like, not poor. That's it. Just I grew up poor.
I just want to live.
I just want to live. I don't want to be. I don't want to be
food
poor.
on the table, pay rent. Yeah,
right.
Pay Netflix.
And so, if you said to me today, right now, like, hey, listen, you know, I got an inheritance from my great grandfather. He left me $7 billion. So I'm just going to give you $100,000 a year. You'd see the most amazing photography come out of me at shows all over the world, right?
Right.
And so that's the possibility that we have in front of us. This idea that asking ourselves, why do we work, goes back to this idea of what is your purpose? And I would argue that most people's purpose is not to do spreadsheets. And I can see the evidence by that because most people are disengaged with the work they do. Most people hate the work that they do. It's the old question of like, what would you do tomorrow if you won $1 billion in Powerball?
Yep. Yeah. The coaching question I always ask clients is like, basically, if money was no option, what would you do? Right.
Right.
And the answers are always very interesting.
Right. My day wouldn't change that much. Right. And a lot of people's day would. And so it goes back to your question about purpose. And so to me, the problem that I'm trying to solve is what I call the deathbed problem, which is that tells you, this data shows you most people who have the opportunity and are fortunate to know when their death is coming, that last time that they're there thinking about their lives and they're asked, what do you regret the most? The number one regret, and most people like spend more time with my family, spend more time doing things that I love. You know, the number one regret is I wish I did the things that I wanted to do, not the things that I was forced to do. Right. And
so it's so interesting. I mean, you know, the next guest that I'm going to have on the podcast, that's the conversation, right? She's a singer, songwriter. She's an artist. And yet the beginning of her career as a child, she was incredibly gifted in science and math. And so her father, who was a business guy, was like pushing her to study quantum mechanics. And she started her university career doing that. And she kept on having like this nagging feeling that she was on the wrong path. And that even though she was incredibly gifted as a mathematician, that was not the thing for her. Right. And eventually she ended up, you know, leaving that and pursuing her career of singing and art. And she has found like real fulfillment and purpose in that. But
that's funny. I don't know who that is.
So
but
when I hear you talk,
I want her to talk to my daughter.
Dude,
my
youngest daughter. You are, no. Believe me, when that podcast comes out, I will send it to you so you can share with your daughter because she's a remarkable woman. But you know, coming back to your earlier point, it sounds like what you're saying, Jaime, is, you know, with artificial intelligence or robotics and everything, is it fair to say that you are kind of like viewing the future as a glass half full kind of person, and that you believe? Don't want to put words into your mouth, but is it conceivable that artificial intelligence is going to usher in this golden age where the guy who is driving Uber today because he has nothing else will all of a sudden, A, no longer be able to drive Uber because it will drive itself, and B, all of a sudden have a chance to kind of like retool and do something that really gives his life meaning?
Right. It's almost like, yes, I am saying that. So you're not putting words in my mouth. But I'm also saying that I'm realistic enough to know that we have to go through dystopia, I guess, before we get to Nirvana. Right. Like, and that's how I guess, I don't know if you've ever watched the show Foundation, but it's basically, you know, it's this idea that the end is coming. How long do we live in darkness is up to us. I guess it's the same thing as that show, right? Which is, do we live in darkness for a couple of years or do we live in darkness for decades? And the problem is that most of my experience in understanding history shows us that it's going to be a while. But yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
my worry
idea.
as well.
Yeah,
That's my worry as well.
it's this idea that we just got to get our shit together enough as a nation, as a country, as a world to understand that yes, there's a place. Like right now, everyone's complaining about AI and natural resources being used and water consumption. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
that is a problem, but it's a temporary problem. Fusion's coming, and fusion will take care of all that. So there is a world where we have free energy, we have technology beyond our comprehension and belief. I mean, the what's his name from DeepMind at Google on 60
Yeah,
Minutes.
Demis. Yeah.
Demis said on 60 Minutes that we're going to cure all diseases in the next 10 years. I believe him. Like,
I do too.
I was press
I do too.
credentialed at Google. I know that if you're going to say something on 60 Minutes, it better have been vetted over and over
Yeah.
again. So
Yeah.
I believe when he says that, I believe that that's possible. And so what does the world look like when we get to this nirvana and progress? I mean, look, the path of our existence
Yeah.
is progressive, right? Like I often remind people that we think things are bad, but 200 years ago, when people ate organic food and had fresh, clean water and had fresh land and had fresh every vegetable and everything was fresh and there was no processing, everyone died when they were 40. And now, 200 years later, we're living into our
Yeah.
80s. Why?
Yeah.
Technology and science, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so technology and science will get us to the next phase, but we go through this dystopian phases for some reason. I think maybe it's just humanity. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that. You have to ask someone else. But I think that we will get to that place. And I think that's why the problem I'm trying to solve is this, that deathbed problem around purpose. And I'm trying to do it in early education, right? Which is like, can you imagine being in 6th, 7th, 8th grade and spending time exploring what you like, what you don't like, what you care about, what you don't care
I
about, what
think
you're
I
interested
think
in,
I
what
think
you're
it
not interested in, right? And then in college, spending that time honing in those skills and getting really good at the things that you're passionate about. And then later in life, being able to have those human skills to say, I can do anything I want and flip and flop on anything that you want to do because we have this baseline of economy that's taken care of for us.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned that I thought was very interesting is you were talking about how you as a parent were able to identify your kids' gifts and therefore redirect their focus on learning, right? Tell us more about that. For the parents that are listening to this, right? For the parents who have teenage kids, I do. How do you as a parent identify what your kid is really good at? I call these your superpowers, right? Because going back to the Ikigai framework, one of the things in the framework, which I believe strongly in, is you got to do something that you're not just passionate about, but you got to do something you're really good at doing, right? That you really like just naturally have that aptitude. So as a parent, how do I spot what my kids' superpowers are? How do I figure that out?
That's a great question. And there's a book in there we should write.
Holy shit, yeah.
I think that there is
it's our next project, man. I don't think you have enough projects.
I get it. Because it's a great question. The answer is simple, and it applies to everyone. The answer is pay attention, right? At the end of the day, pay attention. They tell you.
Yeah.
You tell other people too, by the way. Here's a great experiment. No matter what you're doing in your career right now, just announce to your friends that you've lost your job and that you're looking for something to do, right?
Yeah.
The responses that you'll get back from people are like, oh, can you help me do this? Can you help me do that?
Yep.
All of a sudden, they will reflect back to you what you're good at. You think you might be good at this. When I left Google, the amount of companies that reached out to me and goes, hey, can you help us tell a better story? Can you come and work with, we want to expand our space. Can you come help us figure out what that looked like? The things that people wanted my help with were not the things that I thought I was good at, right? And so there's this reflection that we need to ask from people. We lie to ourselves. I have this whole bit about how we have it backwards. We tell kids not to lie. Right? And like, don't lie. Lying is bad. Lying is nature.
We're lying to them right there.
Lying is real. Lying is nature, right? Like that's not a twig. That's a bug. That's not a butterfly. That's a moth, right? Like you don't look like that. You're this tall. We lie all the time. what we should be telling kids is telling the truth is hard, but it makes you strong. It gives you, it's a virtue, right? So being honest and telling the truth is a hard path, but you get a lot from that. That's the way it should be. And so we lie to ourselves and we lie to each other all the time. And so for our kids, just watching them and what turns them on, what gets them crazy, what, like I'm going through a phase right now with my 11-year-old where if I say to her, go clean your room, it's like I'm murdering her, right? She just doesn't
Yeah.
want to hear that. But
Yeah.
if I say to her, like, hey, will you paint me this picture or whatever? Oh, get the things out. Blah, blah, blah. Like I got my 13-year-old stepdaughter who will make a PowerPoint presentation for you for any issue that any argument that she has. Like, here's my
Right.
PowerPoint presentation. She's gonna run a business. I can already tell.
Right.
You can start
Yeah. Yeah.
telling. They tell you who they are. Here's a condition though, and this is the hard part for most parents, especially today, is and this could be the most controversial thing I say is you got to stop helicoptering your kids. You got to
So
stop
true.
being so in their lives, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to stop telling them what to do. Like my
Yeah.
daughter comes to me and says, I want to make dinner. My response is like, cool. Not,
Yeah.
oh, you got to do this and do it this way and do it that way and
Yeah.
do it this way.
Or you got to make this recipe and use these ingredients. And yeah.
And
Exactly.
she was like, when she was done this one time, when I'm telling the story, she was like, grabs the pan, like, how do I clean it? I'm like, I handed it back to her. I'm like, you'll figure it out. And I walked out of the room. Like we got to give them the space to figure things out. And that's what we want to do in the school. But we can be doing this at home too, which is this idea of like giving them that space and that freedom to explore. Because at the end of the day, if they can explore different aspects of everything in life, they'll figure out what they like and what they don't like. And I think we make a mistake trying to dictate and trying to be very prescriptive with what we do with our kids. I like to say I'm the godfather of free range parenting. I have no idea where any of my kids are at any time.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, to your point about observation, I observe, I spend a lot of time with my daughter when I visit Chile because, I go to Chile to see her. I'm divorced. My ex-wife lives down there. And so when I'm with her, I'm like really, really, really present. And one of the things I noticed with her over the years is that she's really into Roblox, right? She just spends like gazillion hours building shit all the time. And not only does she build stuff, she's got like 15 different houses she's built and all these cars that drive, but she will go through an excruciating level of detail building the house. Like, it's got this kind of staircase and it's got these kind of stained glass windows. And, the slope of the balcony is this way. And it's got a car garage, that's underground, right? Not just a garage, but an underground garage, right? And so,
Yeah.
and she will walk me through the entire freaking house. And not only has she built a house, but she has decorated meticulously every single room. And so my question to her was, and I started noticing this several years ago. I was like, what do you think of like doing this as like, in the real world? Like, I don't know, decorating the inside of houses or figuring out what kind of furniture. And so, it's kind of like leading me to the belief that, she could be, I don't know, either an architect or like an interior decorator but to your point, it's kind of like by observing the things that I see that give her energy, where she spends gazillions of hours, it's starting to give me an idea of, okay, how do I guide and nurture and shape that versus, you got to be good in math or you got to be good in science or you should get a business degree or you should be an entrepreneur or whatever, right? It's to that extent. I don't think enough parents, I think particularly certain cultures, like certain Asian cultures, the parents are so wrapped up in this identity question of, no, you're going to be the first person to go to college. You're going to be the first doctor. It's like, dude, the kid doesn't want to be a freaking doctor.
Right.
Right. And I see this over and over and over and over. But I want to pivot now to kind of, because we have 15 minutes left in the show and I'm conscious of time and I'm conscious you have like this crazy wealth of information. So I want to get as much out of it as possible. I do want to pick your brain on something very directly related to learning, but in a kind of different context of a different type of persons and explore your thoughts on this. How do you go about, let's look at the older generation of people, right? When you decided to leave Google, when I decided to leave Google, right? We both had our reasons. And so the question I want to ask you is, it's a two-part question. First is, why did you decide to leave Google after 15 years there nearly, right? Which I'm sure you've been asked this a million different times, but I really want to understand more what was the purpose you were trying to pursue when you decide to leave Google? And then the follow-up to that is, there are so many people right now that are stuck or are clinging on to careers that they hate. You know, you cited the 80% disengagement level. That number is up there every single year. Gallup publishes the same number, and it's just getting worse. So the second question following that was, what does a person do when they realize they're stuck and they hate what they do?
Right. Those are good questions. So the quick story that why I left Google was, well, two reasons. One is a very specific example. We had a team event, and the team had gone from me and Jeff Keltner, two people, to 200 plus people, and there was like we had a team thing. And I went and sat down at this long table, and this woman, I won't say girl, but because she was like 23, she had just joined Google, sat down, and we're like chit chatting, whatever. And she looked at me and she goes, "And who are you?" And I'm like, "All right, time for me to go." We've gotten so big that I'm not
Yeah.
even relevant anymore, right? So
Yeah.
that's number one. I'd launched Google Apps for Education. I launched Chromebooks. I launched a bunch of programs inside, and so it was time for me to go. And at the same time, and this is my opinion at the time. It has changed since, because I believe Google's going to win the AI race, hands down. I've been saying
Yeah.
I don't
It's
even use
interesting.
ChatGPT. I don't use ChatGPT, and my favorite text messages every time a new data survey comes out or a new test comes out that shows that Gemini kicks ChatGPT's butt and everything. I'm like, I wonder who said this 3 years ago. So I used to say Google was a dying company, and I believe that was true because they were trying to compete in the cloud market space. They were trying to take on Amazon and Microsoft, and Amazon had 60% of the cloud market and Google had like 4%. And then they spent $1 billion and then had 5%. And the mistake that I think that they made was they brought in all these outsiders from Oracle and Sun Microsystems and Microsoft, these VP level people who come with their teams of 10 or 12 people on their
Yeah.
own. So they come to
Yeah.
join the company, and they screwed up the culture as far as I'm concerned when the culture that I grew up in when we had 4,000 people when I started, right? And so I think that the culture aspect of it, the fact that it was turning into a company,
Yeah.
I'm one of those weird people that I took a pay cut to go work at Google, right? Because I wanted to work. Culture is the most important thing to me, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, when you
Same.
ask me, how do we change things? How do we change organizations? How do we change education? I've been saying for 15 years, at the end of the day, we don't need anything new. We need a culture of innovation and iteration and all the things that go into building that. And that's hard. Creating a culture
Yeah.
of
It's really
innovation
hard.
is hard. And so to me, that started going away. And so I'm like, it's time for me to go do something else. And honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had saved enough. I knew I had a couple of years where I can figure things out. I wanted to write a book. And then life happens,
Yeah.
shitty things happen. I had a shitty thing happen to me, and it
Mhm.
sent me in a different direction, but it sent me into a direction of understanding who I am and why I kept
Right.
repeating patterns and why I kept doing the
Right.
things that I was doing. And that led me into meditation and consciousness, and that led me into like, why are we here, and purpose and all these things. And like, what is success? Like, you ask someone, what does success mean to you? And you and I grew up being told what success is. Success
Yeah.
is you get a
Yeah.
job and then you move up levels in that job, and you go from this to VP to this, right? And success is you buy a house, and you buy a bigger house, and you buy a bigger house in a nice neighborhood. You got the car and a bigger car and a nicer car. And that was success. And then what we all realize as we get older is that none of those things are success. And that
Yep. None of it matters.
success is inside you, right? Happiness is inside you, and being happy in the present, in the moment, and living in the moment, living in the now. Those things is what came out of it for me. And so I think fundamentally, if you're struggling with your work, if you're struggling with understanding what you are meant to do, don't go read a book. I mean, read a book, read your book, read lots of books, but look inside. It's all in here, right? It's all, everything that you need for success is in here. Happiness is in
Right.
here, and
Yeah.
learning how to live within that moment, within yourself, living in that will bring you success. So to me, how I define success? A freedom. Freedom from what?
Interesting.
Freedom from yourself, freedom
Yeah.
from your fears, freedom from the things that hold you down,
Mhm.
freedom from the things that tie you to things that you think you're supposed to do, freedom
Yeah.
from just being nervous and scared all the time, or freedom from judgment from other people, where people were judging, 60 years ago, you'd be yelling at me to get a haircut, right? And so all those freedom from yourself, freedom from all the things inside your brain that tell you no, 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 no. When you get to that place and you can really identify, what your purpose is, what you are meant to do, what brings you happiness, what brings you joy, the rest of it gets pretty easy.
Yeah. I think those are really excellent points. And I mean, to somebody who is starting to come to that conclusion to look inside, right? Because it's very interesting that you say look inside, right? I mean, when I wrote my book, 2 years ago and published it, people always say, well, why did you call it Step Back and Leap? Because everybody always thinks that when you do a career transition, you take a leap, right? I'm going to do a startup. I'm going to take a leap. I'm going to ditch my career. I'm going to take a leap. I'm going to leave this woman, right? I'm going to take a leap, right?
Right,
They always think
right.
about, and I always said that it's like, you can't take a leap without searching deeply within yourself first, right? That's why I said step back and leap. It's like take this time, look inside. Sounds like you did the same when you left Google. I did the same when I left Google. When I left Google, I went down to Peru, and I went to the ruins, right? I went up to what's that place called in Peru? The like famous ruins down there,
Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu. I went to Machu Picchu. I learned to meditate. I took Landmark Forum. I read voraciously because I was so lost. I was like, really don't know what I want to do. And it took me arguably a couple of years to figure that out. But, if you tell somebody to look inside, and I agree with you 100%, I think that's where it starts. But being practical, what does that mean, Jaime? I mean, you mentioned one thing, which is ask other people, right? To
Yeah,
your point, when
yeah.
you left Google, all these people started coming to you and say, "Oh, Jaime, can you do this? Can you do that?" And that starts to give you an inclination of, "Wow, these people see that I'm good at these things. Therefore, maybe that's an option for me. Maybe that's something I need to look in more deeply." What other tools or techniques or ideas or tricks or whose counsel did you seek when you were trying to answer the questions of what's next?
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. The practical stuff is the important stuff, right? Because I
Exactly.
think when I say freedom, I mean freedom from a lot of things. So for example, like I said, it was my birthday on Saturday, and I honestly had no idea how old I was.
Yeah.
Age isn't a construct. Age is a number. All that is true. We look at Here's an example of a paradigm shift. We look at age
Yeah.
as a negative.
Yeah.
Always. It doesn't matter if it's positive or a negative. It's always a negative. Here's a quick example. You like, oh, that guy's too old to date that woman. That guy's too old to start playing the piano. That woman is too young to lead that company. That guy is too young to lead that division. That guy's too young to be president. That guy's too old to be president. We literally do. It's all negative. There's nothing positive about age when we talk about age.
Very true.
And I,
Very
and I
true.
think that limits us, right? And I just saw an article. I haven't read it. I actually bookmarked it about how the entrepreneur time frame, the biggest jump in entrepreneur time frame right now is 70 to 79,
Wow.
that age group. So I think it was in Forbes or Wall Street Journal that I'm
Seven
reading.
79.
Yeah, that age group is the one that's starting in successful companies, right? And so this idea that I can't do this because of age, right? Or because of these limiting factors goes back to this freedom piece that I was talking about, which is that freedom from understanding that. So like I dropped my daughter off at school, and on the way back, I'm like, oh, I want to, because she's in the school, she's a lead in a school play, which totally makes sense to who she is. And I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to play the piano so I can practice with her. So I'm going to go learn how to play the piano. No one's going to say, "Oh, you're almost 60 years old. You can't learn how to play the piano." Like, I don't care. I can be 97 and I can start playing volleyball. This limiting factor that around time. So I think that is the most important thing. That freedom from, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what position you're in, what situation you're in. Whatever it is that you want to do, create a roadmap for how do you get there. So
Right.
what's the problem that you want to solve? By the way, it doesn't have to be a social problem. It could be, how to design houses, how to be an interior designer, how to make people happy in their homes. It could be
Yeah.
whatever. How do you want to solve it? How do you want to take all those experiences that you have to
Right.
solve that? And then what do you need to learn? What's the next thing you need to learn? And this is the beauty of AI and technology, is that literally everything that you need to be good at, anything that you want to be good at, is out there for
It's
you.
online. Yeah, it's all online.
This is when when someone says when someone says to me, "Oh, you're very creative. I'm not very creative. You're good with technology. I'm not good with technology."
Yeah.
My response, and this is why I don't have a lot of friends. My response is, "No, you've chosen not to be creative. You've chosen not to be good with technology." I will literally say to people, "I have this. I don't. I'll never say I'm a bad cook. What I say instead is, I've chosen not to be a good cook.
Right.
Can I be a good
You haven't
cook?
invested the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't
Sure.
want to invest the time. So I think that's a practical thing, or this idea like, what is it that you want to be good at? What is it that you want to do? And then figure out what the steps are to get there with, and then have this paradigm shift around what time is, because it's not real. Age is not real. None of the constraints that we've put in on ourselves are
Yeah.
real. Like you and I could
Yeah.
put on a backpack and travel around South America or Asia and be completely fine, and live a life that we want to live if that's what we wanted to do. So it's a matter of like picking that choice and doing it without hesitation and without fear, freedom of what people are going to think about me. Like if I said today, if I said to my friends today, "Oh, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian." None of them would laugh. I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're probably going to do that." Right.
Sure.
I'm in the middle of writing an article right now that I'll publish on LinkedIn and other places around this idea around, I got a message from a relative on my birthday. He's like, "Hey, I heard you leveled up." I'm like, "Oh my God, I've never heard it said like that." That's exactly what happened. I leveled up. I've leveled up. Every year I level up. How do you level up? You stay current. You stay curious. You create freedom from the internal pressures that you put on yourself.
Right.
I can
Right.
like, we look at age as something that's declining, but it's not age. It's our, we get lazy, we stop learning, we stop thinking, we assume we know everything. And
Yeah.
instead focus on being curious and asking ourselves, do we really know something? Questioning things, like diving deep into something, going down rabbit
Yeah.
holes over things that are interesting to you, right? That's how you get that mindset turning. And once you turn that mindset, everything's possible. There's nothing you can't do.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on 100%, Jaime. I think as we wrap up here, I think one of the things I would leave our audience with, and you just said it now, and I was at I was at an AI summit yesterday, and I was hearing Fred Vokola talk. He's the founder of a company called Kaseya. Very successful guy. Billionaire, has run multiple businesses and is now running another business, and was inaugurating this new AI disruption summit. And one of the things that he said, and it was echoed by a number of people who were on panels throughout the day, was that really part of the testament to their success was the ability to stay curious. You talked about this. It's the ability to, these guys are constantly learning, they're constantly reading, they're constantly taking new courses, they're traveling, they're experimenting with new things, they're trying new things. To your point, I think anybody watching this, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can constantly be trying new things, right? If you're retired or semi-retired, you have more time on your hands, you have more time than, to play around with some of these new tools, to take a class, to read a book, to meet new people, to ask more questions, right? I mean, one
Right.
of the things that
Right.
I love about this podcasting is I am blessed that every single week I get to talk to interesting and fascinating people like you and learn a whole bunch of new shit that I didn't know before.
Yeah.
It's intentional that I'm always making the effort to learn new things so that I can broaden my perspectives and I have the freedom and the ability to do different things.
But just one more quick point on it, because I think it's
Yeah, sure, of
important,
course.
because I think you know people listen to this and be like, "Oh, it's all pie in the sky kind of stuff that anyone can do or successful people can do." I got poor again, and between the time I left Google and now, I went through a divorce. My middle kid had lymphoma and had to have cancer treatments at Mayo Clinic.
Yeah,
I went back to poor again. So this idea that, well, you can do that because you have lots of resources. No, you do this because you want to do this. It's the opposite. If you do the things you're passionate about, you do the things that you have purpose for. If you do those things, then money comes after. The
exactly.
work comes after. And so it's important to understand that those things are real, that they can happen. And also there are limitations. Like if I said, I love basketball and I want to play for the Suns, it's not realistic. I'm probably not going to play for the Suns or the Knicks. But if I love basketball that much, maybe I can
Yeah,
coach a little league team. Maybe I
yeah,
can volunteer at the local YMCA. There's lots of ways to
absolutely.
get into purpose than think that you have these limiting factors in place.
I think you raised a really important point there, which we didn't touch on the show, which is, purpose can come from many places, right? For some people, their purpose is getting that little league team to win a championship, right? For other people, their purpose is being a good parent and giving their kids an opportunity that they didn't have. So, purpose can come from many different places. It doesn't necessarily need to be tied to your career or to money. And this is what I think is the greatest disservice to culture in this country is that people associate purpose with money, fame, and wealth. And that, of course, is extremely limiting. And when you don't get that, you feel like your life is worth nothing.
Yep.
But anyway, man, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm definitely going to have you back again. And I want to have you back again in a while because I want to know more about, how the project with Tempe turns out that you're working on. I'm super excited and curious
excited
about
by that. And I got some other things in the pipeline that are
I'm
also
sure.
focused on this idea of purpose. So there'll be more things to talk about in the future.
For sure. So before I let you go, I want to wrap up with our 3 lightning round questions. Very quick questions, very quick answers. We'll go through that, and then I'll do a wrap up.
Right.
Question number 1 from the lightning round is: if you could choose one superpower, what would it be?
I love that question.
I love it.
Well, I did time travel. I'd love to time travel.
Okay.
Like I would love to go back in the past and time travel with no impact on anything. Like I can't make more money, but just to be able to go back in time and see things and be there, that's just fascinating to me.
Okay. All right. Time travel. Question number 2. You already answered this. You totally blew this question because you answered it at the beginning of the show. If you could have dinner with anybody in history, alive or dead, who would it be?
It's Einstein. That guy, I don't I'm trying to understand. I try to understand things. That's what I do. Like you tell me something, I try to understand it from different angles. I don't understand how that guy, I honestly think he was an alien because the things that he came up with, the theories that he came up with that we proved 60 years later, he didn't have the equipment to prove these things. I have no idea how he did it. Frustrates me. So I go back in time because my superpower and talk to him.
And he probably still wouldn't tell you.
No, he wouldn't know.
All right. Question number
born that way.
Question number 3. What was the biggest learning that you ever got from a personal setback?
Man, that's a good one. It's our fault. You got to look inside you. Like what? Like we spend so much time blaming other people or blaming other things or blaming circumstances. The biggest lesson for me is what's my fingerprint on this? What did I do to cause this? And the answer might be nothing, but I guarantee you it's not. There's always, you picked a certain type of person, you picked a certain type of role or job, you picked whatever it is, whatever it was that the big setback was, you had an impact on that. You had a footing in it. So what was that? And trying to dive deep into understanding what that is.
Gotcha. Jaime, this has been awesome, man. Thanks for your passion, your energy, your wisdom, all the clarity that you brought to this conversation. Your story, I think, reminds us that education isn't just a system, right? It's a lever for personal transformation. And, purpose isn't something that you find once. It's something that you evolve into, I think, over time. And we have to be kind of courageous and bold enough to reach for it and sometimes do things that, maybe our parents don't want us to do, right? Or as parents, we got to have the courage to help our kids do the things that maybe they're better aligned to versus what society expects from them. So if anybody wants more information about you or your work or what you're doing, what's the best way to get hold of you or to get more information?
Well, you go to my website, jcasap.com, or as a customer service rep told me once on a call when I was trying to give her my email address, just call as soon as possible. I'm like, yeah,
I love that. That's awesome.
So it's jcasap.com. Or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'm on all the social. I don't post as much as I used to because one of the things that happens when you go deep inside is nobody gives a shit what you have to say. Nobody cares, and so it's this idea I only post when I want to post things as opposed to feeling like I got to post all the time. But I'm still on all the social platforms.
I hear you. All right, well, to everybody out there listening, if this episode challenged you, inspired you, made you rethink about, your success in life, your purpose, your career, your parenting, please don't keep the episode to yourself. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can get all of our episodes, which amazing guests like Jaime. Leave us a comment or a like if it made sense. Share the episode. That's how we grow. That's how we help more people. This is Mork Unfiltered. I'm Patrick Mork. And until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and don't forget to lead and live with purpose.